Go.
Hello and welcome to Writer Mother Monster. I'm your host, Laura Ehrlich, and our guest this evening is Sarah Jasat. Before I introduce Sarah, let me tell you about Writer Mother Monster. Our conversations are streamed live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and then released as an audio podcast on all major platforms. As always, please chat with us during the interview, and we'll weave your comments into our conversation. A special thanks to our sponsors and patrons listed on the Writer Mother Monster website. Your support helps make this show possible. And if you enjoy the episode, please consider becoming a patron or patroness to help keep this podcast going. You can look for details at writermothermonster.com. Also, a quick apology in advance. I have a bit of a cold this evening, so I'll try not to sniffle too much. If you're watching live and you see me mute or even turn off my camera for a second, I'm just blowing my nose and I'll be right back. So now I'm excited to introduce Sarah. Sarah Jasat grew up believing her family was very strange, but later discovered she was Indian. She lives in the UK and writes short fiction about the strangeness of family. She dreams about writing a novel for older children if only she could get her own children to go to sleep, which I totally understand. She has a 1-year-old and 5-year-old daughter and describes writer motherhood in 3 words as hectic, joyful, grounding. Please join me in welcoming Sarah. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Laura. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I'm excited to talk to you tonight, and we'll start with your 3 words. Tell us about hectic, joyful, grounding.
Oh gosh, I mean, I think hectic. I like how I chose hectic as the first one because honestly, I'm thinking to myself, it's Thursday, and I couldn't tell you so many things that happened in the last 24 hours. I feel like when you're a mum, your short-term memory is just shot. You don't know anything that's happened. It's just like what needs to happen. And I say to my daughter, I literally say to her a lot, my 5-year-old, I'm like, we need to move on with our lives. All the time I'm like, we're still eating dinner. Come on, we need to move on with our lives. And you're just always thinking about what's the next thing? Like, okay, dinner. Okay, is she eating? Please finish your food. Okay, what's the next thing? Are you in your pajamas? And you're just always on this kind of treadmill. So for me, I just find it, it's just one moment to the next. And I sometimes look back and I'm like, what happened in the last month? What happened in the last year? Like, I had no recollection. Hectic, definitely. What was my second one?
Let's see, joyful.
Oh, joyful. Yeah. No, there are so many moments of beauty, I think, in every day of being a mum, and it's really wonderful. The little smiles they give you, the little comments you get from them, and I think discovering that side of yourself as well, because you live the first however many decades of your life as sort of a certain identity, and maybe you like kids and maybe you don't, and maybe you think you're going to be a mum and maybe you don't. But then when you become a mum, it's like you meet a new version of yourself. You kind of evolve into a new version, and I love that. Like, I love the mum me. Grounding, I guess, I think one of the really nice things about being a parent is having that almost stable home life. So whatever else is going on, whatever aspirations you have, whatever problems you have, you can always remember that you have these little people at home that really love you and that you really love, and that's like the most important thing, and you can always put things in perspective.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, I think all of those are really resonant. The first one, I love that you mentioned how hard it is to kind of remember what you do and what you've accomplished from day to day with the pace of life as a mother, especially if you're a working mother or a writing mother or all of the above. Yeah, there are whole periods of time that are just lost to me, and I'm like, oh, wait a second, when did I do that? It's so confusing.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, I was absolutely frantic because I'm dropping my 5-year-old off at school and feeling really proud of myself because this is the day off from work that I'm actually showing up at the school gates, really, alpha momming it, saying hi to the teachers, and then one of the other mums said to me, "Oh, how did she get on with the spelling?" And I'm like, "What? What spellings? There was spellings." Apparently, everyone else had been doing these spellings every day, and I was frantically at home, like looking in all the places that I must have shoved this paper, and getting really stressed and really frustrated with myself. And finally, I spoke to my mum, and I was like, "How did I not put these away?" And she's like, "We all had COVID last week. She didn't go to school. You didn't get any papers." but it was another week, and I'd completely forgotten that I'd been so sick the week before. We'd all been so sick, and she'd not been to school. I'd not been to work, but completely lost track of that.
Oh yeah, no, that's a great and unfortunate example. I'm sorry that you all had COVID, but glad that you didn't miss a spelling assignment. I have definitely missed many, many of those things. Like my least favorite is those days. I don't know if you have this in the UK. Tell us if you do. Days where like kids have to dress up like something or wear a color on a certain day. I never remember those things.
Oh, those are awful. I honestly, especially because it's like you have to choose the path of like least harm. Do I like throw money at the problem and just like buy them something which is going to be thrown away and made of like plastic, or do I try and be clever? Do I try and make something? But I don't have the time for that. To try and get something secondhand. It's like, why do the teachers do this to us?
I know. Definitely. Yeah, I think last year there was like a dress like a superhero day, and I was like, unless you've had a superhero costume for Halloween, who just has a superhero costume lying around? And it's like, and if and then they said, oh, it could count if they want to dress like a police officer or a fire person, and I was like, well, I don't have those costumes either. So I think we skipped that one, which was fine.
I think that's fair. And like the kids keep growing. So you have the outfit one year and the next year they won't fit into it. We in the UK have like a Christmas jumper day in December. Do you guys have that?
Like wearing we have a wear a silly sweater, like holiday sweater
day. It's the same sort of thing. And I remember I completely lost track last year, and then I suddenly had a notification in my phone, like, don't forget, it's Christmas jumper day. And I was like, do I rush to the supermarket and just buy something? And I went in the attic and I found her 3-year-old one, and I managed to jam her back into it. And I was like, she's going to school and that is fine.
Oh yeah, that was one of the only ones I managed to get last year, because I don't know why, but I went to Target and got the ugliest sweater I could find. It was an ugly sweater. And first of all, there are no ugly sweaters, like purposefully ugly sweaters for children. There are plenty of not purposefully ugly sweaters, but not Christmas. So I got her one that was like the smallest adult one I could find, and she refused to wear it. And now we just have this tiny, horrible sweater that doesn't fit anybody. So
that's brilliant.
Yeah. So let's take a hard right and talk about writing, and tell us a little bit about writing and what you write and the strangeness of family and all of that side of your life.
Yeah. I write. I think I write quite short stuff nowadays. So I've really gotten into flash fiction in the last few years. I think my sweet spot is about 1,000 words. I've just got fed up of like weeping over novels. So like about maybe 8 years ago, I was like, I'm not crying over any more like half finished drafts. Let me just step aside. And so I started writing shorter work, and I had a period of time that I was on a scheme, which I was really lucky to be on. It was almost based here in Leicester. It's called the Middle Way Mentoring, and as part of that, I was mentored by a really successful flash writer called Tanya Hirschman, and she got me. She was kind of like a drug pusher, but like without the drugs. she was like, I see that you've written a short story which is 5,000 words. What would it be like if it was 500 words? And I was like, interesting proposition, Tanya. And from there, it just kind of it got shorter. But I think it works very well as a mum because you can start and finish something, and you can tweak it and hone it, and it all just takes less time, which you just don't have as a mother. And yeah, I very much turn my writing inwards in that I use it to explore stuff that I used to find really weird. So before I'd find this stuff weird and I'd be like trying to talk to people about it, like loads, and people would be like, can you stop talking about the same thing all the time? It's getting weird. And now I've realized that is a sign when people like turn away. That's the sign for me to write that idea down in a story and really explore it that way. But yeah, there's so many things that like seem strange to me, especially like in the Indian culture of family. I lived with my in-laws for 7 years, and that was really very bizarre. Like, it's very strange to live like as a married couple with your husband's parents, like in such a small. I mean, maybe it would be fine like if we lived in a massive mansion, but in a normal sized house, you get to know like way too much about each other. You get very comfortable like arguing with your partner in front of his parents, and yeah, it's so strange. And so I wrote a lot about that. The way that I got married was a very traditional way, kind of assisted, very much like his family came to sit down in my family's living room and eat like savories, and so that worked for us, but it is very strange. It's a very strange process, I mean, if you think about it, any kind of marriage is quite strange, like, oh, we like each other, let's do this like until we die. So I think it's very odd in general, but my specific circumstance and what is considered normal in my kind of culture, I found so odd, and I really enjoyed kind of playing with that. Also, now I think more I'm going into how sort of women get given so much instruction, and particularly Indian women, we get like a lot of how things should be done, and I really have loved playing with that in my writing. So actually, Lara, you did say that I could read a little bit.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. So I'll just read a very, very short bit from a story that I wrote called When Meeting a Boy for the First Time. And I'm so proud of this because it's just a piece that like must have lived inside me for a long time in various forms. And then I was able to put it into writing, and I love it. So yeah, I'll read just the first like couple of lines.
Great. I'm going to give you the full screen here. So I'm going to disappear and take it away, Sarah.
Thanks. Okay, so when meeting a boy for the first time, wear something nice, a full-length ball gown or a hat with an ornamental rose on the front. This will show that you have made an effort. As you walk into the living room, crowded with his family and yours, try to look humble and bride-like and not trip over Chubbs the cat winding her way between your steps. Your father will say, "This is my daughter Sidra," which is the cue for you to make salams and sit down in whatever space you can find. Do not ask the boy's mother to stand so you can sprawl across the sofa with one arm behind your head like Kate Winslet in Titanic being painted by Leonardo DiCaprio. That pose works well for Kate Winslet, but it will not work for you. And there will not be enough room for the boy's mother to sit back down unless she lifts your feet and puts them in her lap. She will not do this. So this is what I really love about this is and this happened to me, but it happens to, I think, all Indian girls as they get to a sort of marriageable age. You get all this advice of what to do and how what not to do, and it's ridiculous. So I just kind of went with the ridiculous, and it turned into this piece which I really love.
I love that piece. Yes, you'll have to let me know later where we can find your work so that we can read, especially the Flash pieces. I love Flash, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But first, I'm really intrigued by the way that you are sort of taking a deep dive into these cultural expectations and the social conditioning of especially women when it comes to marriage and relationships. And while I am from a different culture, I feel like I'm doing the same, and it took me a long time to get to that point where I started questioning, as you said, marriage, for example, which is such a strange institution. And it's, when you think about it, it's like, okay, you know, you meet somebody in your 20s and then you're with them, if all goes well, for what, 70 more years or so.
Yeah, it is.
It's kind of strange. So tell me a little bit more about what it feels like to really mine these expectations and cultural mores, and if you've sort of run into any tensions there when it comes to your own family, whether they read your work, and how that plays out.
It feels kind of, yeah, really brilliant actually, because these stories feel like they are part of me, and they're the stories that I'm meant to write. If you see what I mean. I always joke with my friends. Actually, my friend Sidra, who's watching, I always joke with her that I don't get prompts. I don't understand prompts because I'm like, what, did you already work through all your trauma like writing? Like, what do you need prompts for? Why do you need someone to say like random words or show you a picture? Like, isn't there deep emotional problems within you that you need to sort out? So the stories just come to me really organically, and it feels like a way of organizing what would otherwise come out in random conversations or random arguments. And it feels nice to kind of step away from that kind of almost combative interactions with people and work on something like a piece that will explore the issue in more in depth and more empathetically. And then it gives me like a great sense of peace as well afterwards, when I feel like I've got it into the right form and it's finished and I'm ready for it to be published. And it's not even, I don't really mind about getting things published that much. It's much more about knowing that I've got the story where it needs to be. Yeah, I know I do talk to my friends a lot about this, about how like other friends who are South Asian and write about very true own voices kind of thing. To be honest with you, it's not really been an issue because none of my friends none of my family really reads my work. And I think it would be, I mean, I don't know, Lara, have you ever tried to get someone to read like something you've written? It's quite hard, right?
It is hard, yes. I will say my family does read my work, which sometimes is terrifying.
Yeah.
So maybe it's better if they don't. I don't know.
No, I totally get it. Like, so there's some things that I might write which perhaps, and I think I don't ever, I write a lot about things about my mother-in-law, for example, but I never would write I write, I think, from a place of affection, even though, you know, like any relationship we have our ups and downs, but I hold great affection for her. And I actually have more, what confounds me more is the amount of love that you have in that relationship with someone who is actually absolutely nothing to do with you, but they've almost adopted you. You've almost become their adopted child, especially if you live with them. You know, they end up having so much closeness. Like the laundry load will have your underwear in, and they're going to have to deal with that. And I mean, you will also have to deal with it. But I'm saying you get foisted into this kind of intimacy, and that's something I quite like to explore. So I don't feel that anything I've written would be offensive, but at the same time, I do think it's the heart of you, isn't it? And you don't necessarily want the people who will know what's true and what's not true, or what's coming from your emotion and what's fabricated, to see it. So I mean, my family, my very close family, I'm sure some of them would be interested in my writing, but I'm very careful about what I share with them.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And you said with Flash, something that really struck me, which is that you, excuse me, or in your writing, you can go deeper into an issue and really find a way to articulate your inner life, whether it's trauma or relationships or what have you. So tell me a little bit, because it's really interesting to think about how deep you can go in such a small amount of space. So, what is it about Flash that allows you to go really deep in just 500 words, and how do you do it?
Yeah, it's so. Someone said to me recently, like a friend who's always been really supportive of me, and I send her my stories when they get published anywhere or when I want to, and she's always really supportive. And she said, you've done so many wonderful stories. You're such a great writer. When are you going to do a novel? Which is what every short story writer wants to hear. But I mean, it was from a good place, and I can understand it. But I think, like you're saying with Flash, you're able to tackle so many different things, in a relatively short period of time. In a year, you could tackle, say 6 stories on completely different topics. But I don't know. I think it's a little bit of alchemy to it, isn't it? How we actually get into it. I think for me, it normally starts with a character and a moment with them. And I think Flashes often kind of boils down to a moment, but I find that the moment that I start, which catches me, is often very different to the moment which ends the story and which almost is the story. But yeah, I love that you can kind of really, you can hone into a moment, then you can play with time. You can see how one moment will influence so much later. You can do someone's whole life, how things tie in across decades. I do really like that, the playing with time, and I love how you can really, I think, interrogate a one moment and the weight of it. So I'm really not, there are some wonderful Flash writers out there, and I'm not the most skilled writer by any means. People do some incredible stuff, some really literary stuff, but I do think I've got to a place where I can use my stories as a vehicle for what I want to express. And often it's very, very simple, very simplistic in technique, but yeah, it conveys the emotion, I believe. Well, I hope it does. Yeah, I think Flash really, you don't necessarily get weighed down by the normal baggage of a scene. There's no necessity to describe the room you're in, or what color her hair was, or she put down her glass, I picked up my hat. All that kind of stuff can go, and you can just focus on what is important, and the emotions and what you're feeling.
Yeah, and you said it's an ideal form, especially for mothers. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So one thing that I found, so my top mother tip, which I've only worked out recently, is while I'm nursing, I write on my phone, and it has been working so well, because at first I try to grab time here and there, but especially now that my baby, my 1-year-old, and I'm one of those moms who has kids that don't sleep. I understand that some children do sleep. I've read about that phenomenon, but it's not happening in this household. So, yeah, I have to sneak my time here and there. Waking up earlier, staying up later is not an option, because they don't sleep in the day, they don't sleep at night. So like my baby at the moment is waking up every 45 minutes. So I'm existing on like oxygen, and I don't know how I'm getting by day to day.
Oh, God.
It's an experience. So yeah, I realized actually the only time I'm getting is when I'm nursing. And she doesn't really care what I do when I'm nursing, and she's normally falls asleep at that time. So I was getting these 20 minutes, minute windows, 20, maybe 30 minutes. And I realized I could either read short pieces, like flash pieces, and I would be able to finish the whole thing and just read it on my phone. There's so much out there. Or I could do a bit of writing, or a combination of both, one day, one the other. And at first I had, and I think I still do have, a bit of an aversion to writing on my phone. It doesn't come naturally to me. Most naturally, I would prefer to have a keyboard in front of me and be working on a desktop or a laptop. But I think I've kind of got over it. And yeah, I find it's really good to get get drafts out, and I find in that way I'm able to get, in a month I could get maybe two new stories drafted that way, and then I can revisit them, and even I've this is something that's very new to me, but I've started putting in line edits, which I can again do on my phone. I do it in Google Docs, and I can line edit as if, well, put in line edit comments as if I was reading someone else's work. And actually, I'm very sleepy when I'm doing this. So when I look at it again, it's like I'm looking with fresh eyes at a piece of work I've never seen before, because I don't really remember much of what I put in. So in that way, the mother hormones really help me, because they do say you need a bit of distance and you need to edit with fresh eyes, right?
It's true. Yeah, and since we forget everything that came the week before, it's there you go.
Exactly.
But no, something that I love about this conversation is we've, of course, had mothers at all stages of motherhood and all stages of writing on the show. But I think it's been a while since I've had a guest who's in the midst of the really hard period with not a newborn, but like a child who's going through, for example, this milestone period. And I remember that of every 45 minutes waking up, and it's literally torture. And so it's interesting to see you, and it's encouraging and inspiring to see you figuring out what works for you in the moment of this sleeplessness and this caring for a very dependent young person. Yeah, so that's amazing that you're figuring out strategies that work for you in this moment. It'll be interesting to see how they evolve as your children age. But also, thank you for joining us at 10 p.m. your time, especially considering that you haven't been sleeping. I feel very honored.
Oh no, I was really keen, because I really love the idea of the podcast, and I totally agree, because I was listening to some of the previous podcasts, and it was really nice to hear people talking with perspective about what motherhood and how it's influenced their craft and their practice. But I was also like, sounds like it's a lot easier to write when your child isn't like crying all night and stuff. But no, it's nice as well to have the opportunity to talk about it. I think I'm on Twitter quite a lot, and I see the 5 a.m. Writers Club, and I just look at them with envy, and I want to be like, what life is this, that you're waking up at 5 a.m. voluntarily, and you're like awake, and you can like, you can afford to do that. Like, if I did wake up any earlier, then I think it's so tricky, because you have to be your best self for your child as well, for when you're mothering. You can't do things which are going to exhaust you, even though you might want to, because then you're going to lose when you are with them later, and it's not right. And that's been quite tricky. I also think having two, so I've got like a 4-year gap, and I didn't realize how independent my 3-4-year-old was, until obviously I had a baby, and then I was like, oh wow. And I know people love, and I think it's almost like anti-feminist. It's got to this point where the people love to be like, oh, mums can do it all. Like, mums can still, go out with the baby. You can do it. It's fine. You can do everything you did before you had a baby. And it's like, shut up. No. That suggesting that we can do it is ignoring the fact that there is so much more work that comes with a baby. And I think as well, with the one, it's all fun and games. For me, it was very much like, haha, I've got a little friend, all the stuff I want to do. Now I've got a little someone to take with, I love going to the park now. I can take my child to the park, and we can have ice cream, ho. I ride my bike a lot, and it was relatively easy after the first year. I used to go around with my daughter on the back of my bike all the time, and it was, you packed yourself up with snacks, you got the baby bag, and we were good to go. I mean, it was very empowering, and I kind of still had that sense of independence. But once I had the second one, it was a bit of a shock to my system, because it was suddenly like, actually, there's a lot that you now can't do, or maybe you could do it, but the amount of work and the amount of energy that it's going to require of you and the planning, it's just not really worth it. It's not worth your while anymore. So that was a bit of a shock, and the loss of the independence and the loss of time and the kind of being tied back, especially with nursing. But I think I have adjusted, and of course the baby is getting older. I'm back at work now. I had a year of maternity, which I feel almost shy to tell you, because I know that in the US you guys don't have anything. You just have to, you get the placenta out and then you have to go back into the office, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the job, but yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm back at work, and it's actually quite lovely to sort of, obviously it's always heartbreaking when you're leaving the baby, but it's lovely to cycle away and have your time and not have that responsibility of trying to anticipate what this tiny human wants for a whole day. So no, it is this part of motherhood is the kind of really challenging part in certain ways. I know mothers love to tell me that there's plenty of challenges ahead.
Sure, but that's sort of not helpful, right? Because it's so challenging right now, and it's like, oh, don't tell me it just is. The phrase, what is it? It doesn't get easier. It gets different or something. I don't know what, but it's like, no, I don't want to hear that. I just want to hear that it gets easier. But
Right? I just want them to lie to me.
yes,
I'm open to complete like fraud. I don't mind. I won't remember it, right? They
there
know
you
I won't remember it.
tell me lies now. I won't remember them later.
Exactly.
But no, so there's so many things I want to ask you about, but I want to start with having it all, because that's why I started. I mean, we've said this on the show before, but that's why I started the show, is this sense of when people tell you in, yes, the feminist culture, yes, you can do it all, you can do whatever you want, you can write, you can be a mother, you can do all, and it is disingenuous, I think, because we can work outside the home now, and we can have children, we can do, but society hasn't caught up to that philosophy or that idea. So it is actually impossible to do it all. And it sets us up for failure and makes us feel like we're failing on all fronts. Yeah, so I hear you, and I totally agree with you on that. And I think you're doing an incredible job. Yeah, and I also hear you about waking up early. Before I had kids, I used to wake up at that 5 o'clock and like right before work, and I might be
Yeah.
tired, but that's fine. I can sleep when I'm dead, that whole thing. But yeah, I even though my daughter is 6 now, I still need the sleep, or I'll just be a zombie in the morning. So I don't know.
That's it. And they are so, I'm sure at 6 they still want you to play so much. They want you to be engaged, they want you to be physical, and you need energy for it.
Yes, yeah.
And I think as well, for like I was so like this, sorry, this is trigger like making me think of so many things. Like, for example, I love cycling, and I used to go out with a very casual cycling group on a Wednesday evening, and my husband used to come too sometimes, because we had a 4-year-old who could stay with anyone, at 6 o'clock. And for a long time after if I did show up at the cycling group after I'd had my baby, which would not be on a Wednesday evening, because I obviously couldn't come out on a Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock because your baby is going nuts at that time. Every time at 6 o'clock, they're always going nuts. And they'd be like, "Oh, we haven't seen you." I'm like, "Yeah, because my baby, I've got a baby, haven't I?" But my husband would still go out, and no one would ever be like, "Why don't you stay at home so she can come out?"
Yes.
Which wouldn't have worked because he hasn't got boobs.
Yeah.
But no one would make the suggestion. And even my husband went out on this weekend for like a 40-mile ride, and that's fine. I really support him doing this, because actually, for him and for I think a lot of men actually, the best thing they can do for their children is to take better care of themselves, because especially in my community, men don't take care of themselves, and they have like really a lot of health issues and also shorter life expectancy than they really should have, through things that they could have easily changed. So I really pro and I really support him doing it, but I just thought, like, there is no, like, that is such a luxury to go out for such a long bike ride that will exhaust you to the point that you'll come back and you'll just be like lying down. Like, I wouldn't consider that. And I think, and people on the ride were like, oh, do you think Sarah would like to go on this kind of ride? And I'm thinking, it's not something I can contemplate, you know, it's not something I can even entertain, and I won't be able to entertain it for a good few years. And so there's so much stuff like that you just have to be like, it's not my time, I can't do that right now. And it's hard, it's really, really hard, because, you know, my pregnancies, both times, but especially this time, was really challenging. I mean, I can't complain. I was healthy. There was nothing seriously wrong with me except for anemia and sort of exhaustion and sickness. But my quality of life was right down. So that year got written off. Like, I don't think it even existed. And then, of course, I had a newborn, and it's like, I have two children. So that's maybe 4 years of pregnancy and a newborn. Plus, you're going to add on another year, maybe if you're still breastfeeding. That's now 6 years of, you know, your adult life. If you have another child, you're losing. Actually, this is quite funny, because my friend Sidra, who's listening, she's got 4 kids.
Oh my goodness.
She's got 5 kids. I miss
Oh my gosh.
So she knows exactly. But it is years of your life. Like, this summer, I got really obsessed that I wanted to do a cycle camping trip. And my family was kind of being like, are you sure you want to go cycle camping with like a little baby? Like, you've not really been that far before. And I was like, I just feel like I have to do stuff right now, because I feel like everything's been on hold for so long. With the pregnancy, I mean, let's not talk about the other thing that has caused things to be on hold. But I'm like, I just feel this pressure that I have to do it right now. And it's mother life, isn't it? That you're losing time, you know, you're gaining it in different ways. But as writers, you know, we can't look at retreats. I did a post on Twitter the other day, and it was really interesting, about doing like a DIY writing retreat, and people put some amazing stuff, and I would love to do that. And you can do anything, right? People were saying they just like they went to their friend's house and like house sat, or they go to like a really cheap kind of B&B or whatever, and they go there and they just write. And I was like, oh my God, like even one night of that would be amazing. But I can't, it's not something I can entertain right now because of the responsibilities I have. And, you know, there's no way around that. People, oh my God, don't even talk about it. You know, people love to be like, why don't you just pump? And it's like, oh my God, you don't know what you're talking about.
Pumping is horrible.
It is the worst myth, you know. I think,
yes,
I'm, you know what, absolutely, if it works for you. But I think there's so much, I don't know what's happened. This must have filtered through media somehow. They must have been in a couple of films or in a couple of TV shows. And there's this understanding that, you know, you just pump and then you're free. You do whatever you want. Easy peasy. So it's just not the reality.
No. Yeah. Oh God. So many different directions we can go. No. And Sidra says above, I think this is a nice comment. She says, I think it's most physically challenging for you now, more emotionally later, but not as continuous, hopefully. And I hear that too. Like the breastfeeding part, I feel like once that tapered off, there was a lot more freedom. And then, yes, like I don't think I went anywhere, you know, for more than a couple hours when I was breastfeeding. And I was pumping like at work and everything, but you know, I wouldn't leave my daughter for a day or two. But then after the breastfeeding tapered off, yeah, I'm a big advocate of like doing an Airbnb for a night or two by yourself, like the do-it-yourself retreats. You'll get there. But it is hard. Oh, it's so hard right now.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, actually, I was speaking to my mum about this the other day, and she really put it in perspective for me, because I was complaining that I'm trying to go to work. I'm still doing my writing. I'm busy with the kids. And then we keep getting sick because kids just keep making you sick all the time. Um, and I was like, it's so frustrating. I feel like I'm losing time. And my mum was like, you think it's hard. What about me? Because she's like, you've got the time ahead of you. She's, 30 years older than me. And she, bless her, she lives with me. So she gets the same sickness bugs that the children bring it. We all get it. She gets it as well. And she's like, you've got the time ahead. Whereas I don't know how much time I've got. Like the stuff I want to do as well. So I try to put it in perspective. And I like to think that maybe me and my husband will be those like cool parents in their like late 40s who are like, see your kids, like we want to do our stuff now. We want to focus on us. We want to go traveling. Sarah's going to do all of her writing retreats. And I'm sure there'll be a season for that.
Mm-hmm. Do you have fear around not accomplishing the things that you want to accomplish? Like when you're talking about your mother and the things that she's still, your mother or your mother-in-law?
This is my mother.
Your mother. And the things she still wants to accomplish, and she's 30 years older. And I see my own mother, who's also 35 years older, I guess, and has things that she wants to accomplish. And with aging, though, it's sort of like, well, how much time do I have to do those things? And there's pressure. And so my sort of biggest fear for a long time was that I wouldn't accomplish the things I really felt I needed to do. And I still have that sort of terror, especially around writing. Do you feel that too? How do you feel about it?
That's a really interesting question. I think for a long, long time, I had this fear that my writing, I guess, wouldn't go anywhere. Now I think I'm in a place where I write the stories that I want to write and I am able to share them. And then it's kind of like, where do you measure your success and how do you measure your goals? And I've been quite open when I speak to my writing friends that I'm kind of like, I almost describe myself as a bit lost right now, in that I have really achieved what I've set out to do and I'm doing it and it's really fulfilling for me. And I'm kind of like, well, what's next then? I always feel at the back of my mind, I feel like if I went to like a school reunion, and I used to write in school and people did know of me as someone who wrote like some really bad, poor quality stuff, but they didn't know. They were 15 as well. I was 15. We all thought it was great. And I feel like I would be missing something if I couldn't be like, oh yeah, I did write a novel and like it has got published, and no, it hasn't sold 3 million copies, but it's out there in the world. So I guess I feel that pressure a little bit, but I don't feel, I think right now I don't feel it too much. I think more I don't want to move backwards, because I think the thing that I worry about is sometimes I feel I have to put writing on the back burner, and then I worry about like losing ground and forgetting my practice and forgetting what works and having to relearn it all again. So that's what I do worry about. But I think I've been finding it so fulfilling. And I think for me as well, I used to have a job that I didn't like. And actually my job now I really do like. So having a job you hate is very motivating. And having a job you like and being like quite like happy it's not very motivating. That's when you become very lazy, I suppose. When I can sleep at night, I'll be able to become lazy. Maybe I look forward to that, really.
Tell me, excuse me, what is your day job? What do you do?
So I work in a lab, actually, in a virology lab of all places.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really random, actually. So, at uni, I studied at university, college, to you, Lara. I studied science just because I didn't know what else to study, and I just sort of did that. But I didn't really like academic lab work. It felt very lonely to me, and it wasn't very wasn't exactly a career. So, you know, maybe you could do a PhD, but well, where do you go from there? And it didn't appeal to me. So I thought I would like to work in an office. So I went to work in an office and found it like really soul destroying, and not enjoyable. And I was kind of like, I'm spending my life here, basically, you know, 37.5 hours a week. And it's for what? Like, it's not benefiting anyone really. Um, and I thought actually that I might want to have a more of a job in like writing, like doing content writing and things. So I kind of hustled my way into a job like that. But I still found that I didn't find it very fulfilling. And one problem that I really had is that when I spent all day sitting at a desk, the last thing I wanted to do was to come home and sit down to write. So then I went back to the drawing board, and I thought, let me just try and get a job in hospital labs. I can use my science degree, and I'll be doing something good. And also, I just had my first daughter at that point, so I wanted something close to home, and something a bit sort of stable where I knew what I was doing, and I didn't have to keep thinking about changing jobs and stuff. So I started working in this lab, and I remember when I went in, it's weirdly a lab dominated by women. I don't know why. So I would go in, and there's all these women with their glasses on. We're not going to put our contacts in to like stare at the computer and do our little pipetting. They've all got their hair up in buttons. We're all in jeans and like old trainers. We basically look like homeless people. And I was like, I think like no one's got any makeup on. And I was like, this is my place. Like these are my people. And I found that I really fitted in really well. I love the work we run. Like I always joke in the morning meeting, I look down and we've all got running shoes on, because we're just running around the lab like the whole day. And I love how physical it is. I love the social aspect. So I'm like quite a people person. So I like being surrounded by people. I love that it's all for the good of the patient. And it works so well with my writing because there are times that you're doing a lot of repetition. So in those times you can be mulling over ideas. There's other times when you're kind of so busy that it doesn't it kind of composts things in your mind, and then it can come up in ideas. But you get, you know, you've got all different people talking to you, so you hear about all different perspectives, and that all goes into your writerly mind. And then it was because I'm on my feet all day. I'm happy when I get that time to be creative and do a bit of writing and sit down. Like that's my me time in the evening. So weirdly, it worked out really, really nicely, except that I'm not miserable and don't feel like as pushed to like get a lot of writing done. But no, I think it's for me, this is the right balance, which is, you know, it's so hard to know. Like I would never have known. I do think having my daughter was crucial because I didn't want to be far away from her anymore. I didn't want a job where I was far away. And if I was like, if I'm going to go out of the house every day for so many hours and be away from her, I want it to matter, and I want it to be worthwhile. And I didn't feel like it was before, and I do now. Like I tell her, like, mummy has to go and sort the patient samples because the patients need to know what's wrong with them so that the doctors can make them better. Like mummy has is very important that mummy does this. And I feel like that's something I can be so proud of her. And I said to her the other day, like, what do you think about science? And she was like, girls should do science because mummy's a scientist. And I was like, yes, that's very good. You're very well done. It's all worked out well for you. You've got the right ideas. So she knows I do writing. She knows that I do science. She knows that I have like an active life and I work with people and stuff. And I think it's all really good messages for her. I think when you are a parent, when you become a parent, you kind of question yourself. Am I being my 100% best self to show her, or am I showing her or him, depending on your own child? Am I showing them my best self, or am I not? You know, can they be proud of me or not?
That is amazing. Cedra says that's wonderful. I agree. It's just wonderful. And it is, I feel, very important, especially for, not especially, but I only have a girl, so I would say especially for daughters, to see their mothers doing things that they can aspire to and that they know are for them, especially science, math, that kind of thing. So I will tell my daughter tonight that I talked to somebody who is a scientist and a writer, and she will be very excited about that. Um, and so let's see. I think this is a good moment if you'd like to read something else for us. Let's give
Okay.
you the floor again and treat us again to a taste of your work. And
Okay.
dealer's choice here.
Okay. I don't know. This might be a bit of a downer, but this is a story
That
I'm
is
really proud of.
okay. Okay.
Okay. Um, so this story is called Rex is not the name of the hamster you had when you were 8. It's in an anthology called In the Middle. Oh, it went a bit blurry then. Rex is not the name of the hamster you had when you were 8. You do not want to touch the body. You say so as clearly as you can. It's not difficult. There are no tricky sounds, no R's, or worse, the sh sound that your speech therapist spent an hour of last week's session trying to coax out of you. You say the words properly, you think. Everyone is still looking at you, so you say it again. Your younger brother Raja has no such reservations. He is crouched next to the long metal box that you do not want to look at. Raja can crouch with his feet flat on the ground. You've tried, but you can't, even though you're the older brother. Cold, he says. You can't believe him for sure, though, because everyone says he's very young. Raja is too young to really understand. Raja is too young to remember. You are 4 years older than Raja. I know this is tricky for you. Daddy kneels in front of you. You hear that word a lot these days. Your speech therapist and your teachers and your daddy all use it. Even the word is tricky for you. Is almost as bad as shh. Last month it was your birthday and your parents gave you a golden hamster. His name is Jonas, or maybe Rex. You're not sure, though Jonas is easier for you to say. You've asked for a pet for years, since the neighbor got a spotted Labrador that they sometimes let you walk around the block. Jonas is nice, but you hope if you take good care of him, you can get a dog next year. You think about Jonas and don't look at the box. Don't force him, someone says. Daddy sighs and stands up. Go and play then, he says. You go upstairs, take Jonas out of his cage, and hold his warm body in your 2 hands, feel the heat through his golden fur. The next week, Jonas is renamed Freddie, and months later turns still overnight without warning. This too you do not touch, and when Daddy asks if you would like a dog, you shake your head. Raja grows up, grows past you, marries a quiet girl who brings you food in Tupperware boxes each weekend, and talks about you in hushed tones on the phone to her relatives. You dote on your nieces and nephews, visiting newborns in the hospital and gifting older ones with sweets and toys, but never pets. You turn 43, still 4 years older than Raja. Now you're 1 year older than Mummy. You wonder what might have happened, what your life might have been like if Daddy had asked one more time. Thank you for letting me read the whole thing.
Oh my gosh, that was beautiful. And
Good.
it, I think, goes back to what we were talking about, flash fiction, and how you can compress so much into a short or a small space and cross time and space and emotion and show the scope of relationships. That was a beautiful piece.
Thank you. And I think it's something that when you have kids, you kind of tap a little bit back into the childhood mind. And I don't know about you, Lara, but I am constantly paranoid. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, is my parenting style, which is basically like, let her run wild, like, how is it going to affect her as an adult, you know? And I think about those things a lot. So in this piece, I was thinking about, you know, how parental loss would affect a child growing up, you know, and how children see things, how they perceive things, how their mind kind of jumps. My daughter, bless her, has had to experience not parental loss, but quite a few, like 2 quite big losses in her life, and it's, you know, it's a challenge talking to them about these things, and that's something else I'd like to explore even more in my writing. I mean, you can, with Flash, you can come at the same topic from so many different angles in different stories, which is one of the wonderful things. I think a lot of the inspiration for this story came from, you know, watching the way young children move, you know, how they can do that little squat.
Oh yeah.
We can't do it, and they
Yeah,
just do it
yeah.
so beautifully and so naturally. And it's like they have this knowledge and this innate kind of way of being that it's almost like they lose it as they get older, and then we've lost it completely.
Yeah.
And it's almost that they have an advantage of youth, you know, of that almost ignorance and naivety empowers them in a lot of ways. And I think that's fascinating as well.
Absolutely. No, I love how you articulated that. And I've loved talking to you, Sarah. Thank you so much. This hour has just flown by, but I hope you'll come back and talk
Sure.
to us again when hopefully when you're well rested and you know
That
we'll
might never happen.
I hope it will. I have all of my digits crossed for you. So
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's been brilliant. Yeah, I feel like we could have talked for another hour. You've been wonderful, Lara.
yeah. Oh, thank you. No, I feel the same. And we'll just have to stay in touch and you'll have to come back on. And yeah, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, take care.
You too. And thank you all for joining us this evening. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation as much as I have. And if you have, please consider becoming a patron or patroness of the show at writermothermonster.com to help me keep it running. I hopefully will no longer have a cold next week, so I will stop snotting all over my microphone. And I will see you all next Thursday. Good night.